there, it's Ginger. I'm back. I'm Ginger if you're new. And my dog is trying to knock over the iPad. But anyway, I'm going to do the rest of Luke chapter 6, God willing. I'm going to get the rest of it done. We'll see how we do. But last time, remember, we did the first 11 verses, and we talked a lot about the difference between the Mosaic Law, which was, there were 613 Mosaic laws, and then we talked about the Pharisaic law, because that's why the religious leaders of the day were so furious with Jesus all the time. He wasn't following the Pharisaic laws, which were impossible to follow. Even God's laws were impossible to follow. You know, I've learned a lot from this, because I always thought of, when people try to get you to follow all the Old Testament law, or, I used to think of, I didn't really understand totally the difference between Pharisaic law and Mosaic law. And now I feel like I really do. A lot better anyway. These laws of Jesus did follow God's laws, the 613 Mosaic laws. He did follow those perfectly, which shows that he is God, and that's how he could save us from sin, is that he led a perfect life that we didn't. But the law that these leaders were trying to put people under, it was much more expansive than that. So anyway, I feel like I have a much better understanding of it than I did. But anyway, we're going to get into Jesus choosing the 12 apostles. And there's a difference between an apostle and a disciple. So Jesus had many disciples, including women. He had female disciples as well. You think of the word disciple and you think of the 12. But there were many more disciples than that, including female disciples. And basically, disciple just means learner. And apostle means sent one, someone with authority. So out of Jesus' many disciples, he's going to choose 12. And those are going to be his apostles, and they will have authority to do miracles, to cast out demons, to teach. He can send them. I have to show you something. Let's see. Do you see that? He was laying his head on my books, trying to get my attention. Look at the camera, Ruger. Look at the camera. Oh, he's wanting my attention. But anyway, we'll try to get through this. So anyway, let's just start in. Like I always say, let's just go for it. I'm a little out of sorts. It's like Sunday night, and it's all right. Let's just go for it. Starting with verse 12 of chapter 6 of Luke. It was at this time that he went off to the mountain to pray. He had just healed the man who had the withered hand. He healed the man's hand, which infuriated. They were infuriated, like the Pharisees that were there. Okay. It was at this time he went off to the mountain to pray, and he spent the whole night in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples to him, and chose 12 of them, whom he also named as apostles. Simon, whom he also named Peter, and Andrew his brother, and James and John, and Philip and Bartholomew, and Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon who was called the Zealot, Judas the son of James, and Judas Iscariot, who became a traitor. Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place, and there was a large crowd of his disciples, and a great throng of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon. Okay, so people are coming from all over to hear him. He's got all his disciples there. It's a flat place. We don't know the exact geographic location, but I think if you go to Jerusalem and go on a tour, they're going to say, this is where Jesus gave the Beatitudes, which are we going to read about. And it could be the right place, or it might be a different place. But it sounds like maybe they were on a flat place, but there are hills that have flat places. So I think they take you up on a... I'm sure they told me when I was in Israel where this took place. It was right by the lake. Okay, so the people that came from all over, not just the region of Galilee, but all over. Hi, Kitty. Who had come to hear him and be healed of their diseases. She's jumped up here. You guys don't need to see all my critters. She jumped down, but anyway. Who had come to hear him and to be healed of their diseases, and those who were troubled with unclean spirits were being cured. Kitty, stop that. And all the people were trying to touch him, for power was coming from him and healing them all. So all these people came, even from out of the region, to hear him teach, to be healed of their diseases, and to have demons cast out, basically. And power was coming out of him. It says power was coming out of him. And all the people were trying to touch him. That would have been an interesting scene. I don't know how many people were there, but he had quite a few disciples too. So, I don't know, but obviously word's gotten around about him. You know, even though they didn't have social media and TV and radio, newspapers, things got around. So, he was healing them all, it said. So, I mean, that kind of news is going to get around. Okay, so we're going to do the Beatitudes, but before that, let's just talk about the disciples a little bit. So, he picks 12 men out of all of his many disciples to be with him, to teach, and to empower that they can go do work in his name. So they're like representatives in a sense. The first one that's always mentioned, and the one that we think of so much, is Peter. And his name, I wrote down all their Hebrew names. If there was a Greek version, I wrote that down, because this book is written in Greek, but these men were Hebrew. I think they were all Hebrew. And so, or they were Jews. They spoke Hebrew. That's what I meant to say. Hebrews, I guess you could call them Hebrews. So anyway, Simon Peter, it's Shimon in Hebrew, and his name is Simon in English. In Aramaic, it's Cephas. And I think Aramaic is like an older form of Hebrew. So that would be Cephas. I'm not going to get into all of them because I could spend all night taking, even though I wrote them down, I could do that. But all these names of Peter, they mean rock. They're associated with the rock. So, okay. And then Andrew is his brother. Yochanan, Yochanan, is John in English, and it means God is gracious. And John's brother is James. A lot of these names are still familiar today, and anyway, James means heel grabber. So remember in Genesis, Esau's brother Jacob grabbed his heel. They were twins, and when they came out of the mom, Jacob had his hand on Esau's heel. So John and James, another name, you know, in Hebrew it's Yaakov, but it could be James in English or Jacob in English, and that's where the heel grabber comes in. Now, I don't know why I didn't know this. I've been reading this incredible book by this incredible rabbi, Messianic rabbi, and I don't know why I didn't know this, but he's enlightening me quite a bit. And I should have picked up on this because the information's in there. But these two disciples, John and James, they are the first cousins of Jesus. And I did not pick up on that. If I did, I forgot about it because I didn't remember. Their mom, and these brothers, their nickname is the Sons of Thunder. I don't know why, but that would be an interesting thing if we knew. Their mom, her name is Salome. And Salome is Jesus's mom, Mary. It's her sister. So Salome and Mary are sisters. And John and James are Salome's kids. Jesus' aunt's kids, his first cousins. I didn't really pick up on that. How did I miss that one? No matter how many years you study, you still pick up new things. So, and then in English, Philip, and that means lover of horses. Nathaniel in English, sometimes you'll see his name Bartholomew, which they said, he said in the book here that it's not really, Bartholomew is not really a name, but a title. And Nathaniel means gift of God. But sometimes in the scriptures, you'll hear him referred to as Bartholomew. Thomas, which is common again, which means the twin. And in Greek, it's Didymus. And you'll hear that a lot, Didymus, his Greek name. And then Matthew, his name was Levi. We talked about him. He was the tax collector who was like the worst kind of tax collector. He was a toll person, a toll collector. And we think his original name was Levi, and when he became a believer, it was changed to Matthew. So, and then Yaakov, which is Jacob or James. There's a different James. There are two disciples named James, and they're typically referred to as James. And then there are also two disciples named Judas. Judas was a very common name. And Jesus also has a sibling, a brother, named Judas. Remember, a lot of people think Jesus never had any siblings, that Mary was a virgin all her life, and that's not true. Mary was a virgin till after she gave birth to Jesus. But after that, she had a normal relationship with her husband. She had other children. We know Jesus had at least 4 brothers. And the Bible mentions sisters, plural, meaning at least 2 sisters. But we don't know who the sisters are. We know 4 names of Jesus' brothers, and one of them is Judas. The book of Jude is written by Judas. So this is a Judas who is also called Thaddeus. And then there's another Simon, Simon the Zealot. And then there was Judas Iscariot who betrayed Jesus and, sent him to his death, basically. So, Judas Iscariot, he's the only apostle who is not from Galilee. Like, Galilee is the region up north in Israel around the Sea of Galilee, all those towns around the Sea of Galilee. Jesus and all the other apostles are from that region, but Judas was not. They think he was from the town, I'm going to spell it for you, Kiryot. And the reason they think that is because of his name, Iscariot. And I don't know what the connection is there, but that clues him in. Or that name could mean that he's a tanner, that was what he did for a living. I don't know. But he is the only apostle not from Galilee. Now, what is it, Kitty? Oh no. I might have to go rescue her. We'll see. I can't hardly stand to have my critters crying about anything. But anyway, Simon the Zealot, the other Simon, they call him a zealot. A zealot was a person who had an extreme position of they call it Pharisaism, like Pharisaical rule. He believed in active resistance to Roman rule. They were controlled by the Romans at this point. And he would not normally probably associate with someone like Matthew, who actually worked for the Romans as a tax collector. So Simon the Zealot would have been totally against the Romans in an extreme way, and Matthew worked for him. And yet Jesus chose both of these guys, and they worked together. So it's just interesting who he chose. And Jesus chose the person who would turn him in, who would eventually get him killed. So there's the ones that have, there are 3 sets of brothers, okay? Peter and Andrew. And Peter's the more dominant brother in the scriptures. Like when they refer to Andrew, he's a great disciple or an apostle, but they usually refer to him as Simon Peter's brother. So Peter must have been the more well-known brother. And then James and John, the cousins of Jesus, the sons of thunder. And I'm so curious why they were called that. And then also James and Judas, the son of Alphaeus. Now, this isn't the Judas that betrayed Jesus. It's the son of Alphaeus is a different Judas. Judas was a very popular name. So it's not always discussing the person who betrayed Jesus. So anyway. In fact, we were talking about Simon the Zealot, how they were really, really opposed to Rome. Zealots actually would kill Jews who worked for Rome. So it's just interesting that Jesus chose those 2 men. But anyway, let me read a little more. Is there anything I want to tell you? Oh, there's names are repeated. Again, there's 2 Simons. Is that right? Yeah, 2 Simons. Simon the Zealot and Simon Peter. And then there are 2 Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus, and Judas, also called Thaddeus. And then there's 2 James. James, the brother of John, the sons of thunder, and then James, the brother of, and James, the brother of Judas, the son of Alphaeus. The sons of Alphaeus. Is that all the name repeating? Oh, 2 John. 2 Johns? No, just 1 John. And John and Jesus are very close. It's like one of Jesus' closest friends who wrote the Gospel of John. Very close. So anyway, and the Gospel of John is my favorite, but that's not what I thought the Lord wanted me to teach. So I taught Luke instead. So anyway, those are the disciples. And there's little songs you can learn, like in school we used to teach the kids a disciple song, There were 12 disciples, Jesus called to help him. And that's one way you can memorize the names. If you want to get on YouTube and just Google one, you can find one. So, where are we at here? Okay, so now Jesus, he's got them all there and he's going to teach. And he's also healing and casting out demons because people are touching him. Power's just coming out of him. So it sounds like even if they touched him, they were healed. Again, verse 19 says, and all the people were trying to touch him, for power was coming from him and healing them all. So it sounds like they were healed even if they just touched him. So if there were hundreds of people there, if you could just, wait it out until there was some space around him and touch him, I'm sure it was quite a scene. But he did end up teaching. So that's one of the reasons they're all there. So I'm going to read this. This is the Beatitudes, which you've probably heard before. The Gospel of Matthew also has this, but not as in much detail. And I'm going to maybe read it out of there too, because it does clarify some, Luke is going to share the parts that he believes are important, and then Matthew the same. So verse 20, and turning his gaze toward his disciples, he began to say, blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Okay, now it's not talking about financial poverty. It's talking about spiritual poverty. And one of the reasons we know that is from what Matthew says. I wonder if I should just read that section over in Matthew right quick. Okay, in Matthew's rendition, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So Matthew explains it's spiritual poverty. So if we feel, and this one, like I wrote some of this stuff down here. Let me find my. And our author said too, he said that, sometimes there's not a perfect translation into a language. And so they'll pick a word that comes as close as they can think of. He thinks, like in most of the translations, it'll say blessed. Blessed are the poor in spirit or whatever. He thinks a better word, a closer translation from the Hebrew or from the Greek word, is happy. So if you could think of it, happy or the poor in spirit. If you, poor in spirit meaning like you don't have any righteousness of your own. There's no righteousness of your own. It has to be given to you. And so you don't have anything to offer spiritually of your own. So if you just read that, you might think it's financial, but really it's not. And even in church, you might hear that if people are misunderstanding, and they might think it's a financial thing. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you shall be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you shall laugh. And the context here is like mourning. Like Matthew says, blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. I guess the blessing out of having hard times or being sad is that when you're comforted, you really feel comforted. And if you, there's nothing like being able to appreciate good things when you've gone through bad things. I mean, you have a whole new appreciation for it. So, and our author says that mourn in this case means being sensitive to sin. So like if you're mourning over the bad things you've done, the sin you've done, you will be comforted when you know that Jesus has paid for it. So let's do the next one. This is slow, but we'll just kind of go through it. It's better to just go through it slowly and get a better feel for what it really means, because people misunderstand the scriptures all the time. And I read some scripture to you last time about, government rule that we talked about that people misuse all the time. And it's very easy to do. So it's good to just kind of get a new feel for it. And I'm learning new things all the time too. So I will learn stuff of, that I misunderstood and it really meant this. A lot of it is looking at the Jewish culture of the day and understanding what was going on and what they meant by that. Okay, so blessed are you when men hate you and ostracize you and insult you and scorn your name as evil for the sake of the Son of Man. Be glad in that day and leap for joy, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way the fathers used to treat the prophets. So, Matthew doesn't really... Well, at the bottom he says, blessed are those who have been persecuted for... This is Matthew. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Like up here in Luke, it's talking about... I don't know if those are two things we're talking about the same thing, because here in Luke, he's talking about, where did I lost my spot? Oh, blessed are you when men hate you, ostracize you, and insult you, and scorn your name as evil for the sake of the Son of Man. The Son of Man being Jesus. And these men would be persecuted for being his followers. And some of them even were killed for being his followers later. But anyway, so that's in relationship to God, I think. Anyway, I'm going to keep going because I think that one, I don't want to give you any misinformation. I'm a little confused. But woe to you who are rich, for you are receiving your comfort in full. Again, it's not really, I don't think it's talking about money per se. So there's a lot of rich people that follow God very closely and know him very well. So it's, and always have been. So it's not necessarily talking about money. In Matthew, it says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And over here, let me just keep going. I'm kind of going back and forth and it could get confusing. So you can read Matthew's account in Matthew chapter 5, but let me go ahead and keep reading here. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you shall be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep. And that goes right after, but woe to you who are rich, for you are receiving your comfort in full. If you think you have everything you need, it's very hard to see your need for Jesus Christ. So, if you're poor in spirit, kind of like it listed before, and it talks about being well fed, which could, it could refer to many needs in life. And if you just have everything you need and everything's just hunky dory, it's hard to know that you need Jesus. But also, I think people in life, they have an easier time if they have some struggles earlier in life, and hopefully not overridden with struggles, but sometimes people, if they have some struggles earlier in life, they learn to cope with them and joy comes later. But so I'll read this in a minute. Hold on. Okay, where are we at? Okay, so 26. I'm going to just keep reading because I could keep you here all night. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for their fathers used to treat the false prophets in the same way. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. And whoever takes away your coat, do not withhold your shirt from him either. Okay. In this, like loving your enemies, I think it could be non-believers. I really do. And when it says love those who persecute you, love those who hate you, you don't have to feel warm and fuzzy. That's not what it means. Love is not just a warm and fuzzy feeling. Love is action. So, like with your enemies, sometimes if I have enemies, sometimes I'll say a prayer for them or whatever, and that'll be my way of showing love to you. It says pray for those who mistreat you. So you can pray for those people to come to know the Lord. You can pray for them to have some kind of blessing or, whatever. And you don't have to sit down and have coffee with people. That's not what it means. So anyway, there's a lot of people that I wouldn't have coffee with, just saying. So now this next part, when whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. And whoever takes away your coat, do not withhold your shirt from him either. I think it was the guy I like to listen from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, the Calvary Chapel Church there. I like to listen to him. He never says his name, so I can't even tell you what his name is. But anyway, I never read anything that he writes or anything. I just listen to him. But he was talking about, this is another one that you could easily misunderstand. So if you just read it and you just think of it in our modern day culture here in the U.S., you might think that if somebody steals your jacket, that you need to give him your, wallet too. And that's not what it means at all. So what this has to do with is something that used to happen in a court of law. So actually, I guess, and this is the guy that I like to listen to from Alberta, Canada. He was talking about it, and like there were times in a court of law where if somebody had something against you and you'd done something and you were found guilty, they could literally come up and slap you. I guess they could hit you right there in the court. And if that were the case, you could offer them the other cheek as well. And I think giving away your coat I think that was a court of law thing too. So it's not meaning, people talk about it like it's, if somebody comes up and hits me, I'm not going to turn my cheek. That's not what it's talking about. But if you just read it casually, you're going to think that's what it's talking about. It had to do with what was happening in court. So we wouldn't know that because we don't have the same experience as these folks did. So good luck. Like if you take one of my dogs, am I going to give you the other one too? No. In fact, it might get ugly. So it might not go over very well. Huh, Ruger? Huh, Bubby? It might not go over very well. So anyway, I always got them right here. Look. Oh my goodness. So people can really misunderstand things. And this is another scripture where someone might convince you that it's okay to take abuse or something. Like maybe a woman's getting beat up in the marriage and boy, she just better take it. Her husband's an authority figure and she better just turn the other cheek. No. No, she doesn't have to take it. And it's, we just misunderstand things. So let's keep going. Treat others the same way you want them to treat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. Sometimes if you're having trouble with someone, you can just find a way to be nice to them. I'm thinking of that movie that has to do with Dr. Ben Carson, and he is, working in a hospital, and he's like new there. And one of the nurses is kind of short with him sometimes, and he's the doctor. He could probably let her have it, give her a piece of his mind, but he buys her flowers one day, and it kind of breaks the ice. So he was kind of practicing this, do good. I have another example. I can't remember where I heard it, but there was like a pro-life crisis pregnancy center, and there were some people protesting them out, like across the street or something. And I would tell you who it is, but I can't remember. I just heard this story quite a while ago. And it was cold out. And so the people inside the pro-life crisis pregnancy center, Christian folks, ordered donuts and hot chocolate and had them delivered to the pro-choice, the pro-abortion protesters. And that was their way of treating people the way they would like to be treated, to do good to people who weren't doing good to them. So anyway, if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend in order to receive back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good. Now, loving your enemies, it could just be praying for them. It could just be doing a favor, buying the donuts and hot chocolate, even though they hate your guts. You don't have to necessarily be their best friend or go to the movies with them. It's, you have to keep it in perspective. And some people, some enemies, you might have to stay away from. Some enemies might actually hurt you if you hang out with them. So, read things the way they're intended and use your head. So, but love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be the sons of the Most High. For he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. I've heard people say, and I think it's really a good idea. I mean, everybody has to do things in their own way, but when you lend money, and I've never really had tons of money laying around to lend, but anyway, people say like if you lend money, it might be a good idea to not expect it back. And that way, if the person can't pay it back or for some reason doesn't pay it back, you don't have a grudge because you were thinking, oh, it's okay if they keep it. So for some people, they're willing to give money, but they don't really lend it. And I think that's probably wise of them. But anyway, okay, this is another one that's misunderstood all the time. Okay, let me read it to you. This is verse 37, and this is another one that people just misunderstand on a continual basis. And I think this is the most quoted. I've heard that it's the most quoted scripture in the Bible these days because we live so politically correct, and people, who are just doing wretched things, they don't want you to ever say that what they're doing is wrong, and so they'll quote this, and they're taking it out of context. Because, anyway, let me read it. Do not judge, and you will not be judged, and do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Pardon, and you will be pardoned. Okay, this is misused constantly. If you actually have the nerve to, a big one in our society would be like if you say that homosexuality is a sin. That's a big one. It's a big one. Oh, you shouldn't judge. You shouldn't judge. Well, the people saying that, they're not the ones who decided homosexuality was a sin. That came from the Word of God. That wasn't them who decided. There's other places in the Bible that tell us we will judge. So this one, I swear I wrote it down. Let me go back because I wanted to go over this. Maybe. Sorry. I think it's maybe in Matthew that I wanted to read. Okay, this is how Matthew says it. And what is meant by this is that judge the way you want to be judged. It doesn't mean you can never judge anybody for anything. If you couldn't, then you can never serve in a jury. You could never be a judge, like in a court of law. People use it to say you can't even make a judgment call. Like, I know so-and-so beat the living crap out of their neighbor because, but you can't even say, well, that was wrong. People who always use this verse for this and that, they use it for whatever is important to them. They'll say, they'll preach, don't judge. But if you watch them, they're constantly judging. Some of the people I know who are the most judgmental people quote this verse all the time. But let me go over it in Matthew's version. Number 7, do not judge so that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. So what these, and that's Matthew's version of the same thing. So what this means is judge fairly. Like don't be harsh in your judging. Give people, the benefit of the doubt if you can. Like if there's always those folks out there who, and I guess we're all susceptible, we all have to watch it. We can be so critical of so-and-so who did this or that when we're doing something 10 times worse. So, anyway, it doesn't mean you can never judge anybody for anything. It doesn't mean that you can't. If you couldn't, we need to open up all the prison doors. And just, if somebody kills their spouse, their child, their whatever, their aunt, we just need to say, well, don't judge. Don't you judge them. They should, they just did what they thought was right at the moment. Don't you judge them. It's just, you really need to look at things in context. And again, this is misused daily, just constantly. It is misused to make you think that you can never say anything is wrong. Sometimes people need to be called out. And even here, Jesus is calling people out. He called them hypocrites. So it can't mean that you can never criticize anybody for anything or never criticize behavior for any reason. If you couldn't, just let people beat each other up. Don't do anything. There's right and wrong, and it's okay to say that. It's okay to say what's right and say what's wrong. So anyway, it's kind of just one of those things. People want to get away with murder, and they want you to condone it. And if you don't, they'll throw stones at you. They'll judge you for judging. Let me go to verse 38. Give and it will be given to you. They will pour into your lap a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return. There was something I wanted to say about this one. I had written down something about this, didn't I? I thought I had written something down about that one. Anyway. That one, a lot of people use it in reference to tithing or giving gifts to the church. I'm not sure that's what it means. I thought I'd written something down on it. But I think it could be any kind of giving. Like friendship, like helping somebody out who's having a problem. I think, it could be financial giving. It could be other things too, I think. I think it could cover... I should look into that because I could have swore I read something about that, but now I'm anyway, there's a lot of ways to give to people. Praise, if they, genuine praise or whatever. And he also spoke, Jesus is still speaking, and he also spoke a parable to them. A blind man cannot guide a blind man, can he? Will they not both fall into a pit? A pupil is not above his teacher, but everyone after he has been fully trained will be like his teacher. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? And we're all susceptible to that one. We just need to self-examine, anyway. Or how can you say to your brother, "Brother, let me take out the speck that is in your eye," when you yourself do not see the log that is in your own eye? You hypocrite. See, Jesus, he's criticizing if that verse that I just talked about, if you could never criticize anybody, then he would be breaking it. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's about judging justly. It doesn't mean we won't judge at all. It means to judge justly and mercifully. You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck that is out of your brother's eye. So basically, examine yourself first. If there's an area of your life you need to straighten out, then do that with God's help. But then you can help somebody who's maybe doing the same thing or something like that. For there is no good tree which produces bad fruit, nor on the other hand a bad tree which produces good fruit. For each tree is known by its own fruit. Speaking of human beings here. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor do they pick grapes from a briar bush. The good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth what is good, and the evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth what is evil. For his mouth speaks from that which fills his heart. Once in a while I watch this show. It's kind of disturbing. I don't watch it very often. I can never constantly have it on, but a few times I've watched Evil Lives Here. Have you seen that show? And on that show, I think it's that one, they'll say, there'll be somebody who just commits horrific crimes, just horrific crimes. And it'll talk about, a lot of times a family member is sharing what their relative did or whatever. And they'll, in writing, it'll say so and so did this and this and this, but there were signs. Now, you can tell a person by their fruit. So that's basically what the Lord is talking about here. That you can, if a person's constantly doing sick and evil things, and sick and evil things is defined by the Word of God, not by culture, by the Word of God. You need to kind of beware of that. Okay, we won't get into it too much because I would go through the fruits of the Spirit and all that, but we're running out of time. I'm already kind of going over, but I think we can rush through the last little bit of this. Okay, so Jesus is still teaching, and he says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? Everyone who comes to me and hears my words acts on them. Everyone who comes to me and hears my words and acts on them, I will show you whom he is like. He is like a man building a house who dug deep and laid a foundation on the rock. And when a flood occurred, the torrent burst against that house and could not shake it because it had been well built. But the one who has heard and not acted accordingly is like a man who built a house on the ground without any foundation. And the torrent burst against it, and immediately it collapsed. And the ruin of that house was great." Anyway, those who follow Jesus' ways, in his teachings, it's like having a good foundation, right? When you have a good foundation, you're less likely to be blown over, to come down. You're your person. I think there's a connection here with the Pharisaical laws as well. But now, in some translations they'll say, "It is written." And if it says "it is written," it's probably referring to the Mosaic laws, God's actual laws. But if it says spoken and it's dealing with laws, it could be the Pharisaical laws. Because remember, the Jews of the day believe, and some today too, also believe that those were oral laws that God gave Moses by word of mouth. So our foundation is on the rock. It's on God. It's on his law, which Jesus fulfilled on our behalf. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm going to end there, whether it makes sense or not. And you can join me next time. And if I have any profound thoughts to expand on that, I will. So I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you later. Bye.